Oh man, this meme about looking forward to seeing how long my videos will get when releases come out is getting insane. You guys really eat this stuff up. I suppose it shouldn't come as a surprise to me why you get all these massive YouTubers insanely successful doing this sort of stuff around TV shows. But yes, guys, today we did have the last trailer of Season 3 for the Heart of Thorns days, for these most recent releases. This is the episode 6 trailer. Now, the devs did tease a little bit at this already last week when they showed us a screenshot suggesting that the new map might be in the Lands of Ore. And, well, though some people did think maybe it was the Fractal, and I suppose there's a chance for both, this trailer does definitely confirm that. This is a crazy trailer for so many reasons. Not just because it's the finale, but I think the devs might genuinely be bringing back some storylines that were wholly abandoned in 2012 with the start of Guild Wars 2 that I desperately wanted. Very similar to how Raiding just brought back Saul and gave us an interesting conclusion there. I think another of my favourite storylines, one of the most criminal acts that 2012 Guild Wars ever did by not including, I think is actually about to come, that they're teasing in this trailer. So I want to share it with you guys. Let's do some frame by frame and let's see how it goes. This is for the final episode, One Path Ends.
Your divine lord is threatening all of TYRIA. If another dragon dies, we all die.
At a time when elder dragons endanger the whole world, Kryta must make uncommon allies.
These roaming undead hinder the flow of energy. We must feed them to the lava, to his fires. The time has come. You ready to fulfill a prophecy? Go! Save the world. Save TYRIA.
Okay, now, as with so many of these trailers, here, by the way, at the end, you can see the devs have done a nice new end slate for themselves for Heart of Thorns, despite the fact we're right at the end of Heart of Thorns now. I don't know how much use they're going to be getting out of that, production-wise, but so this, just like so many trailers, seems like it's got a lot of filler in it, a lot of just player characters, that is, swinging their swords and showing off very basic animations. But I think when you really get under the skin of this trailer, they're hinting at the return of a major goddamn character. Really, really, really huge. So, let's go through frame by frame. I will open by just saying I really like the choice of music that they picked on this one. You'll notice that's the Heart of Thorns main theme, the actual main theme that we get when we're on the character select, and I think that's fitting as we are kind of right at the end here. Yeah, let's just roll on through. Now we start off with just a couple of splashes of text that they've done a lot of the trailers with recently, with kind of the fiery ember things. The last trailer did these fiery ember things as well, and at the time we could only speculate that this was about the return of Balthazar to the story, and it was, or the introduction of Balthazar to the story, I suppose, from some perspectives. They've done that again, and now, of course, we all know, we all understand that fire there and what they're doing with those embers. So they explain that the human gods have left TYRIA, and already there's a bit of a curveball, a bit of a weird thing here, because they say the human gods have left TYRIA, and then they go ahead and say, but one stayed behind. This doesn't make sense. What do you mean stayed behind? Like, that isn't what I understood this story to be with Balthazar. I understood there to be, we had when the gods lived in awe among the people and left, and that was a long time ago. And we haven't really seen in any of the games. We've got that as kind of an exodus of the gods. Then we also have the time where at the end of Nightfall, the gods who had been looking over us and interacting with us in their avatar forms, they decided, right, now this is your world, we're gonna rise Cormyr and then we're all gonna bug off. You kind of got that. And then you've got like sort of more recently where they're not around at all, right? So when exactly they left has always been a bit unclear. I tend to think of that kind of second exodus, if you will, as being the main event, and that's the kind of the climax of the Nightfall storyline. But here they're saying one stayed behind. Now that's really kind of weird. I thought it was that Balthazar had left. Everything had led me to believe it was Balthazar left with them and then got into a bit of a mess later and has only just returned to TYRIA. I mean, look at the way he acted even in the most recent patch, saying that our world is of trivial concern to him. Would he really say that if he'd stayed here? I don't know. Maybe they're just being a bit weird with, maybe there's a bit of finesse going on with the wording here or something, but already that's odd to me. And I wonder what you guys think with regard to their phrasing there. But of course, what are they talking about? They're talking about Balthazar. They're talking about how he's the threat, right? And though we may get to interact with Balthazar a little bit in the Lands of Awe, which will be fascinating, whether he's an ally is very, very unlikely, or so it would seem. So then we get into the actual trailer itself. We'll try and go nice and slow. Lots of reuse here. So there's Balthazar, just reinforcing the point they were talking about a second ago. This again is Casimir bowing down. This is a cutscene from the previous patch, where she's sort of in awe before she gets struck by him. This is sort of the big bad moment for these two lovely ladies' relationship, as you know, we'll probably see some kind of conflict come between the two of them as we go forward in the story. Looking forward to that, as I'm sure many of you are. Here again, reused as well. This is the moment where Omad's machine is kind of doing battle with Primordus, and Primordus sinks back below the lava. And we see him drop down there. And now finally, I believe we're getting into new stuff, but even this is familiar to me. Is this not reused from the Bitterfrost Frontier trailer? I'm sure it is, or something along those lines. And we've actually got a Norn, so there is some voiceover going on in the background at this point, and I guess this is a good time to dive into that. Now, we get a male character saying this.
Your divine lord is threatening all of TYRIA. If another dragon dies, we all die.
Your divine lord is threatening all of TYRIA. If another dragon dies, we all die. So this information we all as players know, but it's kind of new information as far as the story's concerned right now. You know, Timey's only just really, truly, properly cottoned on to that. If you recall in the last patch, we were speculating to Timey like, oh, we're going to have to convince everyone. Explain ourselves why we haven't fought the Elder Dragon. So I wonder whether what's happened here with this voiceover is the patch is going to start. We're going to explain to some other leaders like Newt Whitebear or something. I really don't know whether that's his voice we hear in this trailer here, but we're getting that information out, and now your average Tyrian knows. Like, we'll accelerate that part of the story, and now your average Tyrian knows, oh, we shouldn't be killing any more Elder Dragons, and yet we've got this god who's trying to do exactly that, thus leading to the line we now hear in the background. Either that, or, as I'm sure the comments will instantly clarify for me, that could be the non-player character's voice, and that's the player character speaking there. The one thing I hate about these trailer analysis, really, and I'm bad at, and I will openly admit, as much as I know about the lore, I'm bad at characters, and if this is like, say, a dude that I should know, there's a good chance I won't see it. I swear, every time a male Char appears in one of these trailers, I have to be really careful that it's not Evan Nashblade or, you know, someone that's actually, relevant. Anyway, so yeah, we get a little bit more of the Shiver Peaks. I do want to linger on this for a second as well, because most of this trailer is Awe, and I know that's what we're all keen to talk about, but they did slice a little bit in here, and we have a Norn voice. I'm wondering whether there is going to be a bit of Bram in this patch. So rewind the clock 2-3 weeks ago, and as exciting as Awe is as the finale and so forth, it really, really, really seemed that the finale was going to be to do with Bram. And that was actually something very scary to me, because a lot of people didn't like the Bram story before. He kind of fell out of everyone's good graces, and the idea that we're dealing with Bram's psychology and, you know, teenage angst style storylines and stuff, which we're not all into for the finale, was kind of scary. But now it seems like maybe the Shiver Peaks won't have very much at all. Like, we know that Bram is going off to attack Jormag. Will he potentially wake Jormag up accidentally? That seems like a perfectly logical place for the story to go, but maybe that's not going to feature heavily in the finale. Maybe that's something for the expansion following, which also is a peculiar thing to think about. But we do get a bit of Shiver Peaks in the trailer, which makes me think at least something. There will be some globe-trotting here. There will be a little bit of the Shiver Peaks, and that's not unheard of for Living World, especially when you go back to Living World Season 2. We would have all kinds of crazy stuff, where you'd have a patch that was based in the Dermond Priory Library, but there was a moment where you were at a fort in Kryta, and then you'd go somewhere else and somewhere else. So they can quite easily do this, and maybe that's the introduction to the patch. Maybe we've got the start of the trailer here, and we're seeing a tiny little bit of the Shiver Peaks, and that's the way that the patch itself will go out as well, for all the big lore bombshells and incredible stuff. stuff in ore afterwards. I don't know, but that's kind of my thinking so far. Here, are we going exactly back to Bitterfrost Frontier? Because I'll tell you what, in Bitterfrost Frontier, there was the Arctic, the super cold area, that they didn't use very well in mechanics in the end, didn't pay off. And there were also a few caves and weird bony areas. Do you guys remember? And if this patch is going to have a lot to do with the undead, maybe we're just returning back to Bitterfrost Frontier for an instance, and they'll make use of some of those aspects of the map that they never got to before. I think that would be perfectly serviceable and fun. We haven't seen Season 3 do that yet. You know, we haven't had we didn't go back to Bloodstone Fen after our initial trip there. We didn't go back to Lake Doric after our initial trip there. We haven't gone back to Ember Bay after our initial trip there. The only place we've gone back to again and again and again is Ratanovus. And as I said last patch, I think that's now moved on. But they might do that for Bitterfrost Frontier. And you're really not going to find much discussion about those ideas on the internet right now, but it is interesting to me. So this is obviously a Jade construct. This would therefore be associated with White Mantle, the Massart. This guy's fiery. I cannot remember. I don't think that boss. We fight a version of one of these guys that comes out of a lava pit in Ember Bay earlier in the season, but I don't think he had this. Might be a new texture or a new kind of effect that they've thrown over the model here. He's got the characteristic 6 eyes, which we associate not just with constructs of the Massart, but also we associate having lots of eyes. I think 8 eyes, actually. Just vision and sight were huge themes of the Abaddon storyline. And Abaddon's people, the Marganites. And that is actually going to become a little bit relevant in this trailer in a second, which I'm really... It's very hard to hold my excitement back. Here we go. So, potentially some kind of boss in the new map. Now, we get this shot. Now, this is where things start getting really exciting. We have a character here. I don't recognize this character. I'm scared that it is a character I should recognize. Don't recognize the character, but a couple of things to note. First of all, you'll notice the background. There's not much going on, but this very clearly could be in ore. I mean, it could be in many different places, but I'm going to gamble and say that this is in ore. And what I really want us to pay attention to with this character is 2 things. First of all, there's a ghostly woman speaking in the background right now. And also, look at her armor, look at her clothes. This is gold and blue embroidered, very fancy looking dress. And also she's like vaguely exotic looking. I actually think this might be an Orion ghost. And beyond that, I think that maybe this is even some kind of Orion royalty that we might meet in the next patch. Going out a bit of a limb there, but specifically with the clothes, this is the kind of stuff, as far as I understand, we know the Orions too have been wearing. You might think, oh, wood potatoes. We've never seen a living Orion, really, not from ancient times. How would we know what they've been wearing? A lot of the ghosts that appeared in 2012 in core TYRIA, they just reused shitty looking Crichton models and so forth. How can you know that? Well, we do have, for example, the way that Vizier Kilbron looked in Guild Wars 1 when he wasn't in his Lich form. And even in Guild Wars 2, you've got images like this, for example, which came from that cutscene in a story mode, where you can see he's also in very blue and gold clothing. You can look here, for example, this concept art, similar thing. This is back GW1 concept art that you've got, and this is a shot of him actually reading from the scrolls as well, where he looks a lot blacker and further off in the background, but you can see sort of similar stuff. So I wonder whether she is Orion. Could be wrong, could be something completely different. But in the voiceover right now, whatever this woman is, they're actually talking about Kryta. And I'll go more into that quite in just a moment. Let's keep going along with our frame by frames here. Now, we've got a ghost. Now, this ghost doesn't look anything like any ghost we've had before. I've seen some people online saying, is it Palawa Joko? No, guys, this is not Palawa Joko. This would be lame if this is what Palawa Joko looked like. No, we don't want that. That's not Palawa Joko, but it is a very interesting Lich-like looking character. It is a form of undead we haven't seen before. You've got kind of like the bluish kind of faux fire, almost undead style influence, mixing with kind of a more skeletal thing that you might associate more with Zaitan and his zombies and his undead. So we haven't really seen this, but again, look at the clothes. This just a more golden kind of, we've got a golden crown here on his head. I wonder, is this some kind of supercharged, super powerful leftover Orion undead character, some thrall of Zaitan's, or perhaps associated with something else? Either way, it's so humanoid. It actually looks like this is the kind of character that might be able to talk to us, though I'm not sure how mechanically they would have been able to handle lip sync or something like that. Now, in the audio right now, they're saying this.
At a time when elder dragons endanger the whole world, Kryta must make uncommon allies.
At a time where elder dragons endanger the whole world, Kryta must make uncommon allies. Now, there is a huge amount to pick at here, okay? But the suggestion I think that the trailer is going for is Kryta must make uncommon allies. What's an uncommon ally? Well, because there's been lots of shifting of allegiances and stuff, depending on how broad of a perspective you look at Tyrian history. A pretty uncommon ally, honestly, would be Kryta allying with the undead, would it not? And I think that's maybe what they're looking at here. Maybe they're saying the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and hey, look, we've got all of these, like, perhaps masterless undead still roaming around in Ur, and maybe we can galvanize them somehow. And you might be thinking, well, what precedent is there for that, Wooden Potatoes? When has anyone managed to take control of the undead and have them do their bidding? Well, that's funny you'd ask that. I will come back to that in just a minute. And then, after the voice finishes, we have another shot of another character. And this could be crazy, who this character is. It's I believe she's a black woman, right, with red hair, in a very undeady looking outfit, exploding out of fire. Now, this also comes at the same time as unlikely allies, so I think that this could also be an unlikely ally. Perhaps this is all tied together. And the fire maybe suggests that this character is, like, allied with Balthazar, but I actually think rather this could be the dramatic entrance of this character that's just been attacked by fire, right? Has just, you know, Balthazar's blasted them or something, and you think, oh no, this random civilian is doomed, and then they kind of, well, watch this animation again, they stand out and they sort of explode onto the scene. Ready? And they do this phenomenal slow-mo, and this bit, she looks like a complete badass. Like, she does not look like you want to mess around with her. She looks like she's about to tear someone's goddamn face off. Already very interested in who this character might be. And what if I told you that I think this could be, and a lot of people have cottoned on, this could be Livia. This could be Livia, guys. All right. Okay, so I will go back to that in just a second. Let's keep with the frame by frame, and then we'll come back to her, and we'll try and draw all of these different ideas together, because I really think we could be looking at something here. So let's move on. Another mind-blowing shot. First time I watched the trailer, this was the one that made me piss myself. This is such a cool shot, okay? I want to draw your attention over to this, right? We seem to be somewhere really high up, right? And there's kind of this floating piece of architecture coming down. I wonder if this is one of those Orion rings. Like, if you imagine the ring would come up like this, out of the shot, and then down like this, and we're, like, quite high up. I think that this is some kind of really exotic, crazy-looking place. Again, I believe it's an Ur. And what do we have in the foreground here? These are actually statues to either Abaddon or Margonites. Now, I'm pretty sure it's Abaddon. Now, there's multiple. We know that there's only one god of secrets and water, Abaddon. Or there was only one. There's two statues, though. We know that when he made the Margonites, a lot of them kind of ended up forming an image fairly similar to him. They got the multiple eyes. If you look here, we got the 6-eye thing going on again, as we saw with the construct earlier. But I think that these are Abaddon statues. I think that because Guild Wars 2 has a very distinct Abaddon asset, Abaddon statue asset. We saw it in the personal story when we went to the Temple of the Sunken God with Tyria Al-Rajid, as her name is, the Lagos in the personal story. And as well in Living World Season 2, we saw a giant statue of Abaddon in the Special Archives in the Dermot Priory. Both of those were the same thing as what we're seeing here on this. It could be Margonites. They could be statues after Abaddon's followers from that region of the world. They're from the Crystal Desert. If the story is angling at any point to go towards there, that might be an interesting thing for the devs to start reintroducing. In Guild Wars 1, we saw huge, massive areas of land left over from the Margonites. And so that could be cool to go into. And so sort of seeing two of them. This one also looks quite slender, quite feminine, actually, if I dare say so. And feminine isn't really an adjective I would use when describing Abaddon too much. But whatever this is something to do with Abaddon here. This opens so many amazing doors, guys. This could mean that we get a chance to see some secrets, some things that Abaddon knew about. We may even be in an environment where Balthazar is speaking about Abaddon and what Abaddon knew. Ever since Balthazar came back into the story, I've loved the idea of Balthazar essentially starting to kind of be a new version of Abaddon. And I don't mean that in a tacky way and in a replacement kind of way. I mean that in the sense of, you know, Abaddon fell at odds with the rest of the gods at one point. Why? What caused that? What was the true deep motivations of that beyond just, oh, I want to give people magic? Let's dive into it and see whether Balthazar is sort of a part of a similar story. So this is really cool. If there's anything cooler than going to Ur and learning more about the gods, it's learning about one of the most badass, interesting gods, isn't it? And this part of the trailer proves that that will probably happen at some point in this patch. Even if it is just minor, you know, environmental stuff, because this is a part of the map. But I have a feeling that this will actually be a story step of some kind. Going to be really interesting. Moving on. We got the fiery golem again. I believe the same character we saw before. You know, it's a construct here. Maybe they can draw ties between that and the shot we saw a second ago as well, and draw some definite ties there. Maybe Abaddon knew stuff that was going on with the Missile. I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, more fiery stuff. Could just be a minion of Balthazar's, let's be real. Some kind of new world boss. And finally, very explicitly, very clearly, this is ore, guys. This really struck me, though, because this area of ore, this looks a lot like the existing maps, really. This looks a lot like it could be from Malkor's Leap or Kershor or something. This is not as cleansed and grown back as I thought the devs were going to be given. I was expecting, probably wrongly, I was expecting a lot of new assets, a lot of time to have gone into this map, and it wouldn't, you know, it would be ore, but it would feel almost like a different region because it had such a dramatic change. But you know, there's no greenery here at all, so this will still feel like the other maps, I think, perhaps more than I was hoping for. But hey, it's a Living World release. We've got to put our expectations in check at somewhere along the line. And there will be some greener areas, believe me. So this shot here as well, I don't think many people will really be talking about this, but I find this one very curious. This does prove that, just like that original concept art, probably the loading screen that they released last week with the boat on it, this shows, hey, yeah, there's going to be some kind of coastal, there's going to be some kind of sea access to this map. Looks like some kind of big new boat here. Looks very Char-like, this boat. This could almost be the docks at Fort Trinity, it feels like, but of course we know that it's not going to be, and it's on a different map. But everybody's sort of unloading a lot of supplies here. We've got some new tentative explorer coming along. Again, I don't think this is a major character. Was this the Norn from earlier? Who knows? Get another beautiful shot here, and it's still very distinctly, very clearly ore, but it's now very purpley. We got like this interesting glyph and sort of magical panel going on down here. I'm not sure whether this is like a jumping puzzle or proper puzzle type area. Updrafts proving that yes, gliding will be a component of this. We've never been to ore and been able to, you know, really glide around there and do a lot of flying. And there's so many interesting parts of the geography we're going to look at in a second that really looks like flying is going to be a lot of fun. Hell, think about that shot with the Abaddon statues, right? Gliding around there, if that's super high up in the sky, like it sort of seems like it might be, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know, is this some kind of side puzzle area? The purpley glow, the chaotic kind of magic stuff that we've got going on, I don't know. No signs of unbound magic on this one, by the way, I don't think, unless maybe this is unbound magic over here. Here, this is probably a player character. Interesting style of player character to have done there, I think. But yeah, same area as well. Bit less to talk about. Again, a stupid male Char. No, I don't think this is I think this is just a player character. We're in that kind of normal trailer stuff where they just show us random animations. Fiery stuff going on in the background. Lava. Lava's going to be mentioned in the voiceover as well at one point. We'll come back to that soon. Here we get an undead pirate. This is maybe they updated the asset a little bit to look a bit better, but this is, you know, pretty par for the course. Shows that there are still Aurian undead ambling around this region of the world, as current events told us recently, as I think all of us were expecting. Here we get an oak heart and a much greener area for the first time. Is this an oak heart that's come to ore? I mean, an oak heart walking, that really doesn't seem like too exciting as a part of a trailer, does it? But think about it. What is this doing here? Why is it? There's going to be oak hearts in ore, guys, and I think that that's a really kind of odd idea and a very fun one. And here we've got oak heart walking from left to right, and we've got undead gorillas, baby. Who'd forgotten about these guys? These are really cool enemies. I want to remind you all that earlier in the year we had the Shatterer update, and with the Shatterer update, one of the developers put in a new type of enemy attack, or new like style of thing that enemies can do in the combat, where the branded there would have an ability where they'd lock onto a player and start hammering them in the face, and the player cannot get away unless that branded, I think it's a branded gorilla, isn't it? Or it's some kind of branded horrible big beast, unless its break bar is broken by another player. Really interesting mechanic, fun idea. And when that happened, I remember earlier in the year, I said, listen, this is awesome tech for undead gorillas. People who played this game very casually might not actually have very much experience with these. People who did a lot of a raw explorable mode as the dungeon will understand these enemies a lot better. They're horrible enemies in great many ways, but the way they were designed in 2012 is they'd knock you down and put you in these ridiculously long CCs while they kind of hammer into you. Anyway, it's the perfect kind of time for the devs to look at what they did with the Shatterer, look at what they did with Heart of Thorn's break bars, and take some of these old elite enemies that had interesting ideas and nuance in them but were basically crap, and update them, right? So I'm really hoping for that. Hopefully they can just copy paste regular Aurian gorillas and then that's it. But yeah, so that's a perfect little opportunity there. And, you know, I'm a little bit nostalgic about seeing these guys again. And, of course, they're in a map that could be Kershaw, honestly, if you ask me. That could be Kershaw. Here we get a same vein as the previous shot. You remember the gorillas, guys? You remember the undead giants, guys? A cool little thing they might do with this is actually flag these as credible for the Giant Slayer achievement. That might be fun. Here's a little bit of Unbound Magic in the background, so there will be some. But look at this ring in the background. Look at this. I think we'll be able to go up there. It reminds me a lot of the Temple of Lissa meta event chain. In fact, I think that what's up there could very well be when we're looking at that angle of the Abaddon statues, maybe. Really, really exciting, though. Christ, the things that they could do on this. And fighting more giants should be interesting. Here we've got this guy again. We've got a hero challenge in the background, quite sneaky as well, if you guys managed to see that. Don't forget, this is the last map. We could have all kinds of stuff. We could have thermal tubes if they feel that that's appropriate, and there is some lava and fire stuff. I wonder whether the Kodan magic will make a reappearance, because if this isn't going to be in the Shiver Peaks, that's going to be a really weird mastery that only is in a single map in the entire game, which is very odd. We got more voiceover going on. Again, another player character sort of unsheathing their weapons with a fire explosion, similar to the mysterious lady in red earlier. But I don't think this character is going to be so significant. Looks like a lion guard, actually, maybe. Speaking of the lady in red, we've got her back, as they say, fire. Here she is. Another old enemy. Now, this is probably my favorite Orien enemy, as much as like the gorillas and stuff. These guys were cool, and one of the things I really didn't like in 2012 is the way they introduced different enemies to us. Like, these guys really, if you look at it, these should be the most elite form of Zaitan's troops, except maybe the mouths and the eyes, right? And his dragons. These guys were badass. The Risen Knights, very cool looking creatures. They only really started becoming commonplace right towards the end of the story, and I'm looking forward to fighting more of these, maybe even getting a bit more lore on them. The kind of stuff, the lore we could get on this stuff would be so good. But yeah, and a statue in the background facing away. I don't think we've really got any way of identifying it. Here, another very interesting shot. Now, this is a big dragon, right? But what is this dragon? Because it doesn't look exactly the same as Blightghast. It doesn't look exactly the same as Tequatl or Ogravros. It looks like maybe they've taken Tequatl and updated it a bit. It's got the spikes on the back of its head. Is this going to be a big world boss in the new map? I don't know. I'm not even sure how excited I am by that right now, because every other map in Season 3 so far hasn't done a very convincing world boss. Not a really good one. In the trailers, I always get hyped by them, but in the end, they haven't ended up all that. So maybe we'll get a big, badass, awesome dragon fight here. Maybe. I would like that. But who knows? They might just do it as like a bit of a minor event that spawns every 20 minutes or so, and that's it. I think I'd be disappointed if that ends up being the case. But he does look cool in the trailer, whatever this is. It's hard to tell with all the green. Another big swirling shot. Lots of stuff in the background here. This flowery area. Same player character. And now we get a little bit of Silvari stuff. Now, this is a Silvari face that I think I recognize. I don't know whether it's a known firstborn or secondborn, or whether they're going to be in the plot or anything. But you'll notice that we've got like the kind of very Silvari-like plants and vines and things. We're seeing the fruits, quite literally, of Trahern's labors here. We're seeing the results of Caladbolg being plunged in. And maybe there are some curious Silvari that are coming to check out what's been going on ever since. Or maybe that was another player character. And here, I mean, this looks like Straits of Devastation to me. This looks like, as we look in at Ore, just on the edges of Sparkfly Fen and Mount Maelstrom, just where there is a bit of vegetation. So, again, it doesn't look dramatically different. I was hoping to see these big, like, Orien rings coated in vines and stuff. I don't think they quite did that. We're just going to get more of the same, really, but a bit plantier. Another Silvari waypoint, very green in this area. Here we get some gliding in Ore. We got a big lava fall, of course, very important. What's caused all this lava to be around here? Turbulence because of Prime Orders before we sent him back to sleep, or Balthazar, one of those, undoubtedly. But yeah, we got a flying character, and you can get a real sense of the verticality on this map. This little hole here reminds me of some of the brutal jumping puzzles that we had in Ore, in particular one with all the orbs. It might be nice to see if they do another JP on this one. But and another really incredible shot here as well of a boat super high up, because don't forget this was the sunken kingdom, and now it's risen back against the waves, and with it, it will have caught ships that will have got tossed up into the sky. I've always wanted to see more of this kind of stuff, you know, the ships very deep inland, and this one's super high up. Now remember, we have updrafts, we have ley lines, we have gliding. There is every chance that we might be able to climb miles up into the sky and explore this ship. How cool would that be? And maybe there'll be some like interesting environmental stuff to interact with, or even just a mastery point or something. I think that's a really cool idea. And in particular, you know, in 2012 in Ara, there are 2 points of interest for 2 really interesting ships that we don't really get to learn very much about. One of them is very important. It's called the wreck of the Lady Livia. We'll come to that in just a moment. I don't know whether that is the Lady Livia, but we will see. And this is the final shot. The Red Lady again. Who had more screen time in this trailer than anyone else? This Red Lady did. And we get the name of the release, One Path Ends. So the One Path Ends actually kind of interesting as well. It's a weird name for a release, honestly. I think if you were gonna describe Season 3 as anything, it wouldn't be as one story. It's flitted about several stories. It has not been as cohesive as, say, Season 2 was. And that's not a criticism. I actually like that they flirted with lots of different ideas and played around. So the idea that we had one path through Season 3 and now it's ended is a bit weird to me. So to me, it feels like they might have forced the word path in. Because it's like one path ends and another begins. And the other that begins, guys, is the expansion. An expansion reveal that might even coincide with this release, which is very exciting. But this word path, now, those of you that might have missed it, there's been some murmurings that the acronym for the next expansion is going to be POF. What does POF stand for? Well, people have had a lot of ideas. If the next expansion is about hunting Balthazar down, and this episode could very much be a setup for that, then what if it's like, you know, Path of Fire, something along these lines. One path ends and we move to the next. So yeah, that's really the meat of the trailer. The voiceover, though, let's go back to it, and let's go back to this lady in red, shall we? Let's find a nice little clip of her. The first one where she first appears. Here we go. This BAMF right here. Okay. So, some of the other audio that comes, okay, we have the Norn guy at the start who says, your divine lord is threatening all of TYRIA. If another dragon dies, we all die. Then we seem to have like a ghostly sounding woman and then another woman. Maybe they're both the same character. But here are the lines.
At a time when elder dragons endanger the whole world, Kryta must make uncommon allies.
At a time where elder dragons endanger the world, Kryta must make uncommon allies. And at that moment, they show us both the undead and they show us this woman here. Here's the idea. This woman is Livia. Now, a crash course on Livia for you guys. Livia was a very big, very important character in Guild Wars Eye of the North, where she was a hero that was studying alongside a prominent necromancer, Asura, who ultimately died in the story. Livia is a Krytan, an ethnic Krytan as well, thank God. There's so few of them in the story these days. Most of them are just generic white women now. She's a Krytan that cares a huge amount about Kryta. And basically, everything she did was in lieu of the Civil War, regaining freedom against the White Mantle. And, you know, she cared about her country. Now, Livia is important to Guild Wars 2 players because of a certain relic. So, in Prophecies, before Livia was even a character, we were introduced to a weapon known as the Scepter of Ore. It was a relic wielded by the bad guy of Prophecy, Vizier Kilbron, an Orion. I mentioned him at the start of this video. Vizier Kilbron used the Scepter of Ore to gain control of the undead of Ore, and he used those to attack Kryta. So here we actually have an example of a human wielding dominion and control over the undead. And he did it not just because he was a lich, but because he had the Scepter of Ore. With the Scepter of Ore, he commanded the armies of the undead. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. At the end of Prophecies, we defeat the lich. And in the final cutscene of Prophecies, right, this is way back at the start, guys. This is when Guild Wars was introduced to the world. They gave us a cutscene at the end of Prophecies, which specifically showed the Scepter of Ore disappearing before our eyes and vanishing to some unknown place. The devs at the end of Prophecies basically said to us, this is not the end of the story of the Scepter of Ore. This relic is important. It is not buried on the Fire Island chain with this eruption, as Rurik's sword seemed to be before mysteriously appearing in Ritlock's hands, but that's a different story. The Scepter of Ore, there is more for us to say. We're going to deliberately show it disappearing. That was way back in 2006. And then the Guild Wars 1 story chundled on and plodded on and plodded on and plodded on. We had factions, we had Nightfall, we had Eye of the North, Livia was introduced and so forth. And through none of this ever really was the Scepter of Ore reintroduced. We heard that it had like a sister weapon which we destroyed in Nightfall, but we didn't ever get to see the Scepter of Ore again, ever. And then, right at the end of Eye of the North now, at a time where the devs knew they were going to go to Guild Wars 2, at a time where they knew they were going to do Guild Wars 2 as the story against an undead Elder Dragon, at the time where they were introducing all the Guild Wars 2 races to us, when they were building the bridges, at this point, at the very end of Eye of the North, they showed us the Scepter of Ore again. They reminded us of the Scepter of Ore. They said, yeah, remember this? The story is not over with the Scepter of Ore. You heard about it in 2006. You're hearing about it again. We have stuff to tell you about the Scepter of Ore. And the subtext there is, it's coming in Guild Wars 2. And what's interesting about this final shot of the Scepter of Ore that you can see here is the Scepter of Ore wasn't alone. It was being claimed by a character. It was being claimed by Livia. And that was the last, really, except a small appearance in one of the books. That was where we saw Livia's story with the Scepter of Ore. 2012 comes round. Of course, we're going to use the Scepter of Ore to defeat the undead Elder Dragon. We're going to learn more about it and stuff. But did we? No. Criminal, terrible storytelling. The devs ignored it. And not through Season 1, not through Season 2, not through Heart of Thorns. Never have they gone back to these things. And yet here, in this trailer, we have a woman in Ore. In Ore in 2012, there was a point of interest suggesting there was a shipwreck in Ore, the wreck of the Lady Livia. A woman who is described as being a powerful necromancer, a woman who we last saw with the Scepter of Ore. Now, there's a developer statement saying that she actually gave it up after a while, so she may not have it, and I think a lot of the community's been forgetting about that point. But now that we're returning to Ore, is this, they're finally going to tell us about the wreck of the Lady Livia? Are we going to see that Livia, who has been blessed with long life, as we found out in one of the novels, Livia is back in the story here? Well, I was looking at this trailer and I was wondering, is that Livia? Is this Livia if she just cut her hair? Let's go back and look at her in Guild Wars 1. I picked a random video showing off the Guild Wars 1 cutscenes before I made this here for you guys. I want to thank Akashikaticus back in 2012, who did a YouTube video of all of the Eye of the North cutscenes. And I just picked a random one to see Livia, all right? Listen to Livia in this cutscene. Here's Livia for you guys.
I want this done well, I want this done right, and I want this done fast. I don't want any screw-ups. I don't want any backtalk. I'm looking at you, Vec. You hear me?
Yeah.
Questions? No? Let's go.
It's everything I said and less.
He's not that bad. He's very smart.
And doesn't let a minute go by without reminding you of it.
Gad is pretty abrasive. How did you end up working for him?
In the wake of the White Mantle, my home, Kryta, is racked by civil war. Factions and sub-factions are destroying our nation. We are seeking new ways, new magics, new allies in order to tip the balance and finally bring peace.
And this cranky old Asura is a potential ally.
Ha! All he cares about is his reputation. Tell me, how many of your people has he injured with his experiments? How many have quit?
A few, but I've learned a great deal about necromancy in the short time I've known him. It's worth dealing with his temper and his demands.
A small sacrifice for a greater good?
We all make sacrifices. I would sacrifice 10 times over if it would protect my people.
So listen to that. Look at what they say. I found it astounding to see the comparisons here. So she knows a lot about necromancy, of course. She's a perfect fit for the Ore storyline. She said she'd sacrifice 10 times over for Kryta, but she expressly says in that cutscene that she would pursue unlikely alliances in the defense of Kryta.
Kryta must make uncommon allies.
So is this what this is? Is this Livia? Is the Scepter of Ore? Are they going to finally come back and do these? We had Saul D'Alessio in a recent raid. Have the devs really pulled their finger out of their asses to this extent? Are we actually going to get this as well? I would be completely over the moon. And that's the trailer, guys. I guess we will find out in 7 days. As they say, the time has come to go save the world, save TYRIA. Are we ready to fulfill a prophecy? Well, what prophecy could that be? I don't know about the Flameseeker prophecies. Those were supposedly ended. I'm not sure what the tie with that would be, but we shall see. One path ends, guys. That's the trailer analysis. Thanks so much for watching. Do you think I'm going way off the deep end down the rabbit hole here? Or are we looking at the return of some really badass stories? Abaddon or all that juicy stuff? Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you very shortly.